Chad. With Chad, I got tingles down to my toes, even sitting out in the audience. Matt was less than a foot away, and might as well be reciting a grocery list for all he did for me.
Come on, actress girl, say your line.
Matt hissed up at me. I racked my brain trying to remember Guinevere's line. Then God forgive us both, I muttered, worry fluttering through my stomach as I remembered what came next. Matt rose to his feet. He wasn't going to kiss me, was he? I glanced off stage at Chad, who was still watching me, a strange expression on his face. If only he were up here, holding my hands, pressing his lips against mine, I'd have been seeing rainbows and starbursts and fireworks for sure. But Matt, while he seemed like a cool guy and had started to become a friend, he was still so not my type, and the last thing I wanted to do was kiss him. Luckily, it appeared Matt wasn't all that comfortable locking lips with me either. Instead, we both stared awkwardly at each other, and I wondered what we were supposed to do next. I was so over this acting thing at this point, not that I was ever into it to begin with, and wanted nothing more than to run off stage and out of the auditorium altogether, never to return. Or at least hang out and continue my conversation with Chad. A clapping and wooting broke me out of my trance. Relieved, I jumped back, putting as much space between Matt and me as possible. I looked out into the audience to see who had interrupted us. It was Billy, of course.
Wow, Matt, you're quite the actor.
Billy said, walking slowly to the stage, still clapping.
To make it look like you were actually attracted to Free Girl. That must take mad skills, man. I mean, just look at her. Are there any trolls in this play? She'd be perfect.
I could hear the snickering from backstage from the rest of the actors. Oh yes, hardy har har. No one would possibly be attracted to me. I waited a beat, wondering if anyone, read Chad, would stick up for me, defend my honor as the real Lancelot du Lac would have done for his Lady Guinevere. But no, heaven forbid anyone in this godforsaken school should stand up to the great and wonderful Billy Henderson. Chad might have been sweet and nice and interested in my manga, but at the end of the day, he was still as spineless as ever. Out of here, I muttered, pushing past Matt and stomping off stage. My face burned in fury and embarrassment. I was such an idiot. I mean, what had I been thinking, going up on stage like that? Was I really that much of a glutton for punishment?
Aw, where are you going, Free Girl?
Billy jeered. I heard Matt calling my name as I dodged props and lighting equipment, heading for the backstage door, but I ignored him. All I wanted to do was get the hell out as quickly as possible. I never should have invaded drama club to begin with. I retreated to an empty classroom and sat down in a chair. I retreated to an empty classroom and sank down into a chair, head in my hands. This was just what I needed to knock me back to earth after what turned out to be a pretty decent weekend, all things considered. Soon after I'd sent Sir Leo my note, he logged into the game and we'd stayed up way too late doing this quest where you had to collect ingredients to make a special stew. Not the most exciting quest in the universe, and it involved a lot of brainless button mashing, but we'd made it fun. Chatting, joking, flirting throughout. When we'd finally finished and sat eating our stews by the raging fire in the Elf Tree Inn hearth, I looked up at the clock and was shocked to see it was past midnight, real life time. Time flew when you were adventuring with Sir Leo. But now the elf princess had turned into a pumpkin. Prince Charming had faded into the virtual night. Reality had set back in. I felt like crying, but I was too proud to allow the tears to fall. I was so sick of being a victim, of letting Billy and the rest of them torment me and make my life hell. If you'd have told me last year this was the person I'd become, I probably wouldn't have believed you. And now, a year later, I could barely remember the girl I used to be, the life I used to lead, hanging with friends, going to movies, trying on clothes, giggling about boys, being myself without worrying about being judged for it. It was almost as if that were someone else's life, a movie I once saw. A janitor came by and kicked me out of the classroom, so I wandered into the library and sank down into a chair. I pulled out my sketchbook and looked down at the picture of Sir Leo I'd drawn. Funny how he'd taken on a lot of the physical characteristics of Chad. Beautiful but unattainable Chad. I traced a finger over the character's face. If only I could become like my heroine and get sucked into a video game and meet a dashing knight. I'd be much happier in there than in the real world, I was sure. A girl I didn't recognize entered the library, red-headed, skinny, with a face full of freckles. She sat down a few tables away near the door, and I watched, surprised, as she pulled a copy of Sojo Beat out of her book bag and started poring over the stories inside. My eyes widened in excitement. A fellow manga lover! Who would have thought they existed at Hannah Dustin High? I wondered if I should go over and introduce myself. Would she think that was weird? I realized I had to take a chance. Otherwise, I was doomed to be friendless freak girl for the rest of the year. So, drawing in a breath, I rose from my seat and walked over to her table. Half of me wanted to run the other direction, but I planted my feet firmly on the ground and forced myself to speak. Hi, I stammered. I'm Maddie. I noticed you have the latest issue of Sojo Beat. I haven't gotten mine yet. How is it? Oh, it's so good, she exclaimed, her eyes shining. There's an awesome bonus Vampire Night this month. I just love Vampire Night, don't you? Yuki's the coolest girl ever. I wish I could be her. Then I could hang out with Kaname. How cool would that be? I laughed. Pretty much the coolest thing ever, I agreed. He's so dreamy. I'm Thera, she said, throwing me a grin. I don't think I've seen you around. I'm Maddie. I just moved here a few months ago. Cool. Where did you come from? Boston. Oh, the city. Nice. You must hate it here. It's so boring. It's okay, I said with a shrug. Didn't want to come off like a big city snob to my potential new friend. A car pulled up outside the library doors and beeped. Sarah looked over and waved. That's my mom, she said apologetically as she gathered up her books. Gotta go. It was nice to meet you, though. Always looking for more manga fans. Are there others? I asked curiously. Here at Hannah Dustin, I mean. Oh, sir, there's tons. Not everyone brings their books to school like I do. But yeah, there are lots of kids into it. The car outside beeped again. Okay, she's ready to kill me. She laughed. I'll catch you around. I watched as she skipped through the library and pushed open the glass doors, exiting the building. How lucky that I ran into her. A manga fan. And she said there were others, too. Who would have thought? It would be great if we could get everyone together. Maybe do a manga club like Caitlin and I had back in Boston. And this time, I can make it official, just like we'd always wanted to. I wondered how you started up something like that. I guess I'd have to ask a teacher. Maybe Miss Riley. She was into manga. What was I thinking? I shook my head. This wasn't like Boston. No one at Hannah Dustin was going to join a club run by a freak girl. I'd end up sitting at that first meeting alone in an empty classroom, praying someone, anyone, would show up, avoiding the pity in Miss Riley's eyes when she realized no one was coming. It'd be humiliating, embarrassing, and an utter failure. Unless it wasn't, a small voice inside me encouraged. After all, Matt would probably join. He liked comics. And maybe Luke, if Matt could tear him away from his video games. And that girl Sarah I just met would probably show up. And she might bring some of her friends. She did say she knew others who liked manga. I squared my shoulders and firmed my resolve, deciding to go for it. After all, what did I have to lose? I already had no friends and no life. If it didn't work, I wouldn't be any worse off than I was now. And if it was successful, I'd have a whole score of potential new friends. Excited, I grabbed my stuff and headed down the hall to Miss Riley's classroom, crossing my fingers she hadn't left for the day. But my luck held. She was at her desk, working, when I walked in. Hey, Miss Riley. She looked up. Maddie, she said, smiling at me. You're here late.